She married a man 60 years older than herself, and everyone said she had made a calculated decision. One week later, she discovered something that made her sit down on the floor and cry for a completely different reason than anyone expected. Her name was Natasha. She was 26 years old, and she was tired in the particular way that people get tired when they have been strong for too long without enough support underneath them. She had grown up in a small apartment with her mother, who had been ill for most of Natasha's adult life, a slow and expensive illness that did not move quickly enough to be a crisis and not slowly enough to be ignored. It simply required, constantly, money and attention and the particular energy of someone who loved the person enough to keep showing up. Natasha had worked since she was 17. Waitressing, reception work, data entry for a small accounting firm, 3 years at a call center that paid adequately and cost her something she could not name. She had taken night classes when she could afford them and stopped when she could not. She had a brightness that people noticed immediately, a quickness in her eyes and a warmth in the way she spoke to people, the kind of quality that made strangers feel comfortable and made employers say she had potential without ever quite doing anything about it. She had met Viktor Sorokin at the hotel where she worked the front desk. He was 73 years old, with white hair and the careful movements of a man who had learned to take his time with things. He was not what people imagined when they heard the word millionaire. He did not perform his wealth. He wore simple clothes. He arrived alone. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He tipped generously without making anything of it. He came to the hotel 4 times over 3 months. Each time he stopped to speak with Natasha at the desk, not in the way that made her uncomfortable, but in the way that a person speaks to someone they have found genuinely interesting and see no reason to pretend otherwise. He asked about her life without prying. He told her about his without boasting. Viktor had built his money over 50 years in manufacturing, starting with a single small factory that made components nobody glamorous wanted to make but everybody needed. He had been married once, for 31 years, to a woman he spoke about with a simplicity that told Natasha everything about how much he had loved her. She had died 4 years ago. He had a son, Andrei, who was 35, who ran the business now and who Viktor described with pride and a certain careful honesty that suggested their relationship was loving and complicated in equal measure. When Viktor asked Natasha to dinner, she said yes because she found him interesting. When he asked again, she said yes because she had begun to look forward to it. When, 6 months into a friendship that had become something neither of them had planned, he told her quietly over dinner that he would like to marry her, she did not say yes immediately. She went home and sat with it for 2 weeks. She was not unaware of what people would say. She was not naive about the economics of the situation, about the fact that her mother's medical bills had reached a number that woke her up at 3 in the morning, about the fact that Viktor's offer came with a stability she had never had. She held all of that honestly, and she also held the other true thing, which was that Viktor Sorokin was one of the kindest people she had ever met, that she felt more herself in his company than she did in most, and that whatever this was, it was not nothing. She said yes. The wedding was small. Viktor had wanted it that way, and so had she. A quiet ceremony, a dinner with a handful of people, nothing that required performing for an audience. Andrei was there, Viktor's son, tall and dark-haired with his father's careful eyes and a more guarded version of his father's manner. He was polite to Natasha with the specific politeness of someone who had not yet decided what he thought and was not going to pretend otherwise. She respected that more than she would have respected false warmth. They moved into Viktor's house, a large and quietly beautiful home that had clearly been lived in for many years by someone who valued comfort over display. Books everywhere. A garden that had been tended carefully. Photographs on the walls that told the story of a life in the particular honest way that personal photographs do, imperfect and real and full of people who mattered. Natasha moved through the first days carefully. She was in someone else's life, in the spaces that had been shaped by 31 years of a different woman's presence, and she felt that with respect rather than insecurity. She did not try to change anything. She found her own small places in the house and let the rest remain what it was. Viktor was easy to live with. He woke early and read in the garden with coffee. He had opinions about food and made them gently known. He slept in the afternoons without apology. He asked Natasha every day how she was, not as a formality but as a real question, and he listened to the real answer. On the 7th day she found it. She had been looking for an extra blanket in the large wardrobe in the upstairs hallway, the kind of wardrobe that houses a collection of things accumulated over decades. She was moving things carefully, not searching through anything private, just looking for what she needed, when a box on the upper shelf shifted and several things fell to the floor. She gathered them up. Papers, mostly. Some old photographs. and a folder, plain and dark green, that had fallen open. She picked it up to close it without reading it. But the top page was visible and she saw her name. She sat down on the floor of the hallway right there, because her legs made the decision before her mind did, and she read it. It was a document from a legal firm. It was dated 3 weeks before the wedding. It detailed a fund that Victor had established, not in his own name, not in the name of his estate, in her name, specifically for her mother's medical care. Every outstanding bill listed, every anticipated future cost calculated, a sum set aside that covered all of it completely and then some, with instructions that it was to be accessible to Natasha regardless of the duration of the marriage, regardless of any future circumstances, regardless of anything. It was unconditional. There was a letter attached in Victor's handwriting, short and precise, that said he had not told her about it before the wedding because he had not wanted her to feel that it changed the nature of what he was asking. He said he wanted her to say yes or no only to him, not to the problem he was solving. He said if she found this letter, it meant she had been going through things in the hallway wardrobe, and he apologized for the disorganized upper shelf. Natasha sat on the floor of the hallway and cried. Not because of the money, though the relief of it was physical, a loosening of something that had been held tight for so long she had forgotten what it felt like without it. She cried because of the sentence that said he had not wanted her decision to be influenced by the problem he was solving. She cried because of the apology about the shelf. She cried because a 73-year-old man had thought that carefully about her dignity and her freedom and had quietly arranged everything without needing her to know or to thank him. She sat on the floor for a while. Victor was in the garden. She could see him through the hallway window, sitting in his chair with his book, the morning light on his white hair. She got up. She put the folder back carefully. She went downstairs and out to the garden and she sat down in the chair beside him. He looked up from his book. She did not tell him she had found it. Not that morning. She just sat beside him while he read and she looked at the garden and thought about what it meant to be treated with that quality of consideration by another person. He looked over after a while and asked if she was all right. She said she was better than all right. He nodded as if that was sufficient and went back to his book. She told him 2 weeks later, on an evening when they were sitting after dinner with tea, that she had found the folder. She told him what it had meant to her. She said it as clearly and honestly as she could, without making it larger than it was, because he was the kind of person who received things better when they were not made into performances. He listened. Then he said he hoped she had not felt that it was a condition of anything, because it was not. She said she knew. She said that was the point. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said her mother was welcome to come for dinner on Sunday if she was well enough. He said he had heard she liked a particular kind of soup and that he had been making it for 40 years and would enjoy having a reason to make it for someone who would appreciate it. Natasha looked at him across the table, this 73-year-old man with his white hair and his careful hands and his garden and his 40-year soup, and she thought that the world had a very limited imagination about what love was allowed to look like. Andre came for dinner the following month. He was quieter than usual, which Victor told her afterward meant he was thinking seriously about something. At the end of the evening, Andre found a moment alone with Natasha in the kitchen and told her directly, in the honest way he had that mirrored his father, that he had been wrong to be guarded. He said anyone who made his father sit in the garden with that particular expression on his face was someone he owed a fair chance to. Natasha said she appreciated that. She said she was in no hurry and that fair chances were all anyone needed. He nodded. He went back to the table. They had dessert. The world will always have opinions about the lives that do not fit the shape it recognizes. It will assign motives and draw conclusions and be very certain about things it has not looked at closely. That is the world's habit and it is not going to change. What can change is whether you look closely yourself. Whether you sit on a hallway floor and let the truth of a person reach you without the noise of everyone else's certainty in the way. Whether you understand that kindness does not always arrive in the expected package and that dignity can be given quietly, in a legal document on an upper shelf, by someone who wanted to make sure you were free to choose. Some people will surprise you completely. Let them.